Hello and welcome to my Yu-Gi-Oh channel. Today we're looking at a brand new archetype which is coming out of Yu-Gi-Oh! Rush Duels and Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's the anime. These are known as Sushi Angels. Garibel, the finest Sushi Angel, is a level 8 light attribute fairy type effect monster with 2500 attack and 1800 defense. The requirement: you can activate by sending one monster, must be a fairy type, from your hand to the graveyard, and the effect is to choose one face-up monster you control. It gains 1000 attack until the end of this turn. I like the design of this card. For a boss monster, it's actually quite decent. It can actually also target itself with its effect, making it up to a 3500 attack monster, which can get over pretty much most things, including some of the maximum monsters, whom traditionally they become up to, I think, 3400 attack. So that's one way of using a fairy type engine. It's also not too bad of a cost. It's just pitching any fairy type monster. It doesn't have to be a specific level. It doesn't have to be a specific attribute. Just one of those and you instantly get that boost. Also, I kind of think that this card's stat lineup is quite balanced. It does have a decent attack and a decent defense to it. Dragon Roll, the Sushi Angel, is a level 6 wind attribute fairy type bet monster with 1500 attack and 500 defense. The requirement: during the turn this card is normal summoned. You can activate by placing one monster, must be a fairy type, in your graveyard on the bottom of your deck, and the effect is to draw one card. During this turn, monsters that are level 6 or lower you control cannot attack. So I don't really like the design of this card. It's a lot considering what you're really doing with its effect. Firstly, it's a level 6, so you're tribute summoning it using one of your other monsters for a 1500 attack monster. Not particularly groundbreaking. The requirement does let you just recover one of your fairy types, which isn't a bad thing, but it does go to the bottom of your deck, so unless you're able to shuffle your deck, you're not going to get that monster anytime soon. The effect as well is just to draw a card, and it does limit the types of monsters that you can attack with during that turn. Anything level 6 or lower can't attack, so that means you have to rely on your high level monsters, and if you don't have any of those, that basically stops you from going into the battle phase for the turn. Tiger Roll, the Sushi Angel, is a level 4 water attribute fairy type effect monster with 1200 attack and 1200 defense. It doesn't have any requirements, and the effect is to choose up to 2 monsters, must be level 8 or lower fairy types in your graveyard, and add them to the hand. But for the rest of this turn, you cannot normal summon or set, or special summon monsters from your hand. I like the design of this card from the point of view you are able to just recover 2 of your fairy type monsters. That can be good, especially in the later stages of the game where you might need access to your graveyard. That's fine. But it does limit you from actually summoning that for the rest of that turn, which means you're going to need to have some protection cards to be able to use this during your next turn. Otherwise, your opponent might just OTK you. Monkey Roll, the Sushi Angel, is a level 4 Earth attribute fairy type normal monster with 1300 attack and 1300 defense. I think it's quite balanced for a normal monster. You don't really see many of those that are level 4 with a balanced stat lineup. Either one, their attack is better than the defense or vice versa. And it just says as part of the flavor text, a follower of the gods that dine in the divine sushi realm. All of the rice is swept up by their characteristic seaweed and peculiar sweetness. I think the design of it is actually really attractive, but it's one of these chibi looking cards, so I don't think it's going to be remembered for that long. Spider Roll, the Sushi Angel, is a level 2 dark attribute fairy type normal monster with 800 attack and 800 defense. Again, it's a normal monster, so it's just part of the archetype. It again says it's a follower of the gods that dine in the divine sushi realm. All the rice is swept up by their characteristic seaweed and peculiar aroma. It's probably a lot weaker, and I don't think you'd be actually running this, despite it being a fairy type and specifically supposed to be supporting this archetype. Inside Rollout is a normal spell card with the requirement: you can activate if you control a face-up monster and must be in level 5 or higher fairy type. And the effect: choose one face-up monster your opponent controls. It loses 500 attack until the end of the turn. If your opponent has 2000 or more life points than you, it also loses 1500 attack until the end of the turn. I like the design in this card because if you're actually in a disadvantage and you're really losing out, you're able to make your opponent's monster lose up to 2000 attack points, which is a decent reduction, and I don't think there's anything currently in the game that does that as well as this card does. It can only be run within fairy type decks unless you're planning to splash fairy type monsters that are high levels into some other random decks. Otherwise, if you're doing that, that's very inconsistent. I think level 5 or higher is fine because that means you can just use this effect if you've got a monster that needs 1 tribute rather than needing 2. So in that respect it is quite balanced. Angel Judge is a normal spell card with a requirement. You can activate if you control a face-up monster and it must be a fairy type. The effect is to choose one spell or trap card your opponent controls and place it on the bottom of the owner's deck. This is a great way of using a spell or trap removal card, because instead of it being destroyed and sent to the graveyard, in which case your opponent might be able to recover it, it sends it to the bottom of the graveyard. It's very much like Wiretap trap card, except this doesn't activate during whatever your opponent activates. It can be just used during your turn, and unless your opponent can shuffle their deck, they're not likely to be able to recover that card. Rolling Never Die is a normal trap card with a requirement. You can activate when your opponent's monster declares an attack. As an effect, choose one face-up attack position monster, must be a fairy type you control. During this turn, that monster cannot be destroyed by battle, and your opponent gains life points equal to the chosen monster's attack. I consider this a bit to be like a card used in Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds known as Karunratne. It was a support card for Luna and it was one of her dual spirits. Basically its effect was whenever the monster would be targeted for an attack, you could send the Karunratne back to your hand and therefore your opponent would actually gain life points equal to the attack of their attacking monster. This pretty much does the same, except this provides your monster with that battle protection. Its only concern really is, the only concern I have with this card is it does award your opponent, so the higher the attack points they have, the more life points they have, and the more likely it is that you're going to lose to them. If you are protecting a certain type of fairy type monster, say one of your higher level monsters, that actually might be okay, because your opponent might have only been able to beat over that monster with a specific effect during their turn and can't actually answer your monster on their following turn. And the final card is Rolling Hot Arrow. This is a normal trap card with the requirement you can activate when your opponent normal or special summons a monster. The effect is to inflict 500 damage to your opponent. If you control a face-up monster must be a fairy type, you can also special summon one monster which is a fairy type from your hand face up to your side of the field. I love the design of this card. It not only helps you to special summon potentially a high level fairy type monster, because there isn't any restriction to its level summoning condition. The other thing is it does 500 points of burn damage. Any amount of damage you can actually do to your opponent is always good. Overall, I think these cards are quite decent, except for the normal type monsters, but I think they needed to just fill out the archetype a bit more. Hopefully in the future they will get some more effect monsters alongside some spell and trap support, and that way they might actually see some play within the competitive scene. What do you guys think of these cards? Is there anything you consider running within this? Would you say use the boss monster within another fairy type deck? Or do you think these cards are a bit trash? Whatever you think, leave those comments down below. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to subscribe for more daily Yu-Gi-Oh content.